The next watch I'm going to service is this Elgin gold tone pocket watch. This is one of the watches that my friend Maurice sent me to work on. This one is going to be a fairly easy one to work on because it's a later watch. It's made in the 1960s and it has a Swiss movement made by either ETA or Unitas. It's a caliber 6431-6445. Those started out being made by Unitas and then later were made by ETA after they took over Unitas, and I'm not sure which brand stamp is on there. I could see when I looked at the movement part of the logo and I could see the numbers hidden under the balance wheel, but I couldn't see the logo wall to tell which company it was. To get this apart, it's going to be easy. With pocket watches, you have to remove the movement through the front. The first thing we need to do is get the back off though. And this one unscrews, which is nice and easy. It doesn't have the snap open back like the other one I was working on before that I had to pry open with a knife because it was so tight. So we'll just unscrew the back here. And there's our movement. Now the movement comes out through the front. So in order to get the movement off, we have to remove this screw and this screw. These are what hold it into the case. Once those are removed, then we can drop the movement out through the front. And to get it out through the front, we need to take the crystal off. Well, the crystal and bezel also screw on just like the back did, so they're very easy to get off. But before we unscrew those, I want to take the screws out. That way we don't have to worry about damaging the hands. This movement's going to be nice to work on too because everything is so much larger than a pocket or than on a wristwatch. I can actually see a lot of this stuff without having to use a magnifier. You notice that these screws slightly overlap the rim on the case, and that's what holds it into the case since it drops out through the front. These other screws are what hold the bridges and such in place so they don't overlap the case. Now I'm going to flip it over and take the front off. This watch, I don't know what's wrong with it yet. It doesn't run when you wind it up. It may have a broken mainspring, or it could be just very dirty, so I'm not sure until we get it apart. Oh, here we go. Now it's unscrewing. And there we go. Now set aside our case back and our crystal, and there's the front of the watch, the face of it, and we can drop the movement out into my hands through the front. Now it's going to come out through the bottom has to come out first, not the top, because the stem sticks down into it. The stem doesn't come out. So we need to drop it out through the bottom first. That's not coming out like they normally do, like most pocket watches. I wonder if this has a screw to remove the stem. And it looks like that might actually be the case there. So let's see if we can take that out and see if the stem will come out. I'm going to put the front back on here to protect the hands while I do that. Okay, I got the stem out. You can see it here in my hand. I had to loosen the screw here, and I just loosened it about 1.5 turns, and then the stem was able to come out then. This is different than the older pocket watches I worked on where the stem stayed in the case. So now we need to turn it back over, get the front back off again, and then it should drop out the front. And there we go. So there's our movement and our face. First thing we're going to need to do here is get the hands off so that we can then remove the face. Set it here on this little cushion. And I'm going to use a pair of hand levers. I bought a new set of hand levers that are larger than the ones I use for wristwatches for these pocket watches since they have larger hands. So we'll get to try these for the first time today. Alright, now we're going to put a dial protector on under the hands if it'll fit under there. There we go. I've seen some watches recently where the hands were too close to the dial for that to fit in. And then we're going to take this piece of protective plastic here and put that over it as well. And what we're going to do is we're going to put the hand levers under the hands, pushing in on the plastic, and the plastic is going to serve to protect the dial and to protect the hands from being scratched up by the hand levers. And it will also keep the hands from flying up in the air once we wrench them off, because they're going to want to do that, so that keeps us from losing them. We just pull upwards. These are stubborn today. Oh, there we go. So there's our minute hand and hour hand. And we'll do the same thing with the second hand. Actually, I don't think my hand levers are going to fit under that if I put that dial protector on there, so I guess we're not going to use that. I'm going to use my smaller hand levers for the second hand because it's very small. So my little ones here have smaller blades at the ends of them. Put the plastic over it again. Get the levers under the hand. And off comes the hand. And this dial's in really beautiful condition. This isn't a very old watch though. We're going to have to take off the dial with the dial screws, and they're in the side of the movement. There's one right there. There's probably one more on the other side. Here's another one. So yeah, we got two of those. I'm going to have to get those out. And those are going to take a teeny little screwdriver. And I'm not going to be able to get those off on camera because they're too small. I need to look through a loop, so I will be right back. I got the dial screws out. Now let's see if we can get this dial separated. It's still stuck on there kind of tight. I don't know if there's like old lubricants holding it on or what, but it's not wanting to come up very easily. I don't want to pry too hard and bend it because it looks like it's got a few little waves in the sides of it where someone's done this in the past, so I don't want to make it any worse than it is already. Now here we go. Now it's starting to come out. Yeah, I just felt something pop. I think it actually was stuck on there with a, not with glue or anything like that, but I think there's probably like some dried lubricants or something that were acting as an adhesive. Yeah, that's all there was, just the two dial feet. So, and here's the dial side of the movement. I can go ahead and remove the dial washer. This pushes down. This uses mechanical pressure from the dial to push down on the hour wheel here. And that's stuck on the cannon pinion. Should just lift right off. And then there's the cannon pinion. We need to remove that first before we can take anything else apart. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to stick the cannon pinion into a pen vise and pop it out that way. I've got the pen vise slipped over the cannon pinion and tightened down on it. So I'm just going to give it a pull with a slight twist to get it off, because and you got to make sure you pull it straight. You don't want to accidentally bend the center post with that the cannon pinion is on when you're doing this. There we go. And there's our cannon pinion. I've got the movement installed in a movement holder so we can work on it now with the dial side facing up. The first thing I want to do is remove the keyless works before we do anything else on the movement. Now the first thing we're going to take off is this cover plate right here. It's held on by a single screw, and it covers parts of the keyless works and has a little long piece that comes off here that functions as a spring up against the detent lever, and that's what gives you the detent when you pull the stem out for time setting mode or push it back in for winding mode, is that spring. Did not expect that to pop off like that. Fortunately, the screw didn't go very far. The next thing we're going to do then is to take off the detent lever and the clutch lever, and then the yoke spring, which goes up against the clutch lever. This is sometimes called the yoke. And then we've also got the intermediate wheels here, and then the minute wheel to take off. And the minute wheel I can go ahead and lift off now. I think we can get these intermediate wheels off too. Come on. There we go. I'm going to take these off camera because I'm afraid I'm going to lose those, because that spring can cause things to fly away if I don't have it closer to me where I can handle it. Okay, I got the yoke spring out actually really easily, and the yoke or the setting lever came out too. The setting lever is what pushes the clutch. This is the clutch forward and backwards to change from time setting to winding mode. This is the detent lever, which I need to get out, but it's held on by a screw that's screwed in from the other side of the movement. It's actually the same screw that was used to hold the stem in place. I need to loosen it further so that this will fall out. So we need to flip the movement back over and loosen that screw some more. And once we have that done, then the clutch and the winding pinion will fall out then through the bottom here. I went ahead and loosened the screw right here until the detent lever fell down, and it just fell out through the back of the movement once I loosened this enough, because this screw not only holds the stem in place but also holds the detent lever. The next thing I want to do is remove the barrel bridge, and that's this whole assembly right here. And before we can do that, we need to remove the click and the ratchet wheel and the crown wheel. And so I've loosened the screws for these three things. Now the crown wheel, there's a caution on this I want to make you aware of. On most watches, the crown wheels, and this one's no exception, on most watches the crown wheels are held on by a left-handed screw. That means the screw is turned clockwise to loosen it and counterclockwise to tighten it, which is the opposite of a normal screw. And the reason they do that is because when you turn the crown to wind the watch, it turns this wheel, but it actually turns it counterclockwise. And then as it turns counterclockwise, it turns the ratchet wheel clockwise to wind the watch. Well, with the crown wheel turning counterclockwise when you wind the watch, it would cause it to unlock, or it would cause it to unscrew its own retaining screw, and that's why it uses the left-handed screw, because that way, as it turns, it's not going to loosen the screw, because the screw loosens by going the opposite direction. So make sure when you take these off that you are aware of that, because if you try to loosen it the normal way, you're actually tightening the screw, and if you apply force to it trying to make it go because you think it's just tight, you'll strip the threads. There's our ratchet wheel and our crown wheel. And the click. The click's gonna have a spring underneath it. I gotta make sure I don't lose. Okay, there's the click. Here's the click spring, which fortunately isn't something that's gonna fly out of there. I've also loosened the two screws that hold the barrel bridge in place. There's one here and one over here and one here. And actually I missed that one. I need to loosen that one. Okay, now they're all loose, so we can take the screws out and then lift off the barrel bridge. To get the bridge off, there's little slots on the side of the bridge there that you can slip a screwdriver in there to pry it up, because sometimes these are stuck down and are hard to get up. And there should be more slots on the other side as well. There we go, that's loosened it up. Okay, now I can't get the mainspring barrel out right now because the train bridge is in the way, so we need to take it off next. And it looks like it's held on by two screws. Oh, come on. Now, this is going to be trickier to get off, so we're going to make sure we don't accidentally bend the pivots on the wheels, so we need to try to get it off evenly on both sides. And pop it off with the screwdriver like we did with the barrel bridge. And hopefully it'll just lift off. Yeah, there we go. Now, here's our center wheel. This wheel's not wanting to lift out of there. It's got a real long stem, and I'm afraid I'll break it if I force it. Oh, I see what's holding it. It's the regulator arm is in the way. Alright, well, I'm going to take that off first then. So I'm going to remove the balance cock so we can get the regulator arm out of the way. It also has a slot to loosen it with a screwdriver. There we go. The balance cock loosened up now. We should be able to lift it all out of here. I really didn't want to take that off right away because I need to get the cap jewel out of there first. I might have to stick it back on the movement to do that. So let's go ahead and get these gears out first. There's the center wheel. Now it wants to come out. And then we have the third wheel, which I think that's going to be, I think the third wheel is going to be covered by this bridge here, which is for, I believe, the escape wheel. So I may have to take the escape wheel bridge off first too. Okay, come on, come on, come on. This one's stuck down good too. There we go. Now we can get the third wheel, the fourth wheel off. And the escape wheel, I think it won't, maybe it won't come out until I take off the, oh, there it goes. I thought I was going to take off the bridge for the pallet fork first. I think we can lift our mainspring barrel out now. What I'm doing here is sticking a very thin screwdriver through the bottom hole that the bottom spindle of it goes through to kind of loosen it. Yeah, there we go. There's our mainspring barrel. And I have a new mainspring I'm going to install on this as part of our service. Now the last thing we need to take apart is the pallet fork bridge. That was just held on by one screw. It came off nice and easy. There's our pallet fork. This is unusual. This is the second watch that I've worked on this week that has pallet stones that are white instead of the usual purplish red color. All right, well that's the entire movement disassembled with the exception of the mainspring barrel, and I want to take that apart now. The barrel has a lid on the bottom of it, and there's a place you can stick a tool in there to pry it open, but I've never been successful at getting those open that way without scratching them up. So what I'm going to do is if you look at it, you see the bottom of the barrel arbor sticks out through the bottom. If you put the mainspring barrel onto a hard surface like your workbench tabletop, and you just press down on the sides like that, not too hard, you don't want to break it, but just press down enough that it'll pop the lid off. Yeah, there we go. You heard that snap there, it came off. This one's a little harder to do than the others I've done, but they were all wristwatches that were smaller barrels. Let's get the lid off this thing. There's our mainspring. Now let's see if we can get this out. The first thing I want to do is take out the arbor. And I don't want to take out the spring with the arbor, because if the arbor pulls that spring out, that spring may come flying out and throw the arbor across the room. It'll make it hard for me to ever find the thing again. So I'm hoping I can get it out by itself. Oh, there we go. There we go. It's popped out. I popped it out through the bottom with my finger. Now if I can just get it separated from the spring with my tweezers, we will be all set. There we go. Now let's pull the spring out and take a look at it. Because like I said, I've got a new mainspring for it. See what kind of condition this one's in. A lot of these old watches I've taken apart had mainsprings that were badly set, meaning that they'd taken a permanent coil. And that when that happens, they won't produce very much power anymore, and so you'll have a movement with very low amplitude. And it's kind of a tangled mess as it's come out here, but let's untangle it and see what we got. This is a long mainspring too. Actually, this one's in pretty good condition. It's still got the, normally they're coiled up a bit around where the arbor is, but then the rest of it, you usually have like a long sort of an S-curve. And that looks pretty good. So we probably could have been able to reuse that, but just to feel safe, I'm going to put a new one in anyway, because the parts for these, a new mainspring is cheap. I think I paid $10 for the new one I've got. So I'm going to go ahead and put a new one in it when we reassemble it. Oh, you know what? There is something else I forgot to take out. There are two cap jewels that need to be removed. And there's one on the bottom of the base plate here, and there's the one on the top of the balance cock. These are Incabloc style jewels, and so I'm going to have to open the little Incabloc spring with a pair of tweezers, and then it opens with, you kind of squeeze it together with tweezers, and then it hinges upward, and you can take the cap jewel out. So I'm going to have to do that before we can do anything else. Getting this off is something I'm going to have to do using an eye loop, so I'm going to do this off camera, but I'll show you what it looks like after I've opened it up. Okay, you can see I've got the Incabloc spring unlatched and opened up. It hinges open, and inside are the jewels. It's actually a two-part jewel. When I pull this out, there's going to be a little metal housing holding both the lower jewel and then the cap jewel on top of it, and I'll have to separate the two. And they may be stuck together by oil or whatever, so I may have to use a piece of Rodico or something to kind of pry them apart. If I stick some Rodico on it, I can usually pull them apart that way. So let's go ahead and lift this housing out of here. I've got the jewels out, and then I had to lift them out with tweezers, and then I put the Incabloc spring back down and relatched it. That way it doesn't get damaged when we watch the movement. And I'm going to do the same thing with the Incabloc spring and jewels that are on the top of the balance cock. I've reinstalled the balance cock on the movement in order to get the top Incabloc spring and jewels opened up and taken out, because otherwise trying to do it on the workbench would have risked maybe damaging the balance wheel and hairspring. So once I do that, then I'll take the balance wheel back off. This balance cock and balance wheel was actually the easiest one to reinstall that I've ever done. Everything just dropped right into place. I didn't have to mess around trying to get the upper spindle into the jewel or anything like I do with a lot of the wristwatches I work on. So this was nice and easy to work with. I've got that jewel out. You can see it's just like the one on the bottom. This is the upper jewel for the balance wheel, and the one that we took from the bottom of the movement base plate is the lower jewel for the balance wheel. I've got the spring opened up and the jewel taken out. So I'll go ahead and close that spring again and relatch it just like I did with the one on the bottom. That way when we wash these parts, these springs don't get damaged. They're kind of delicate. And then I'm going to take the balance cock back off, and once I do that, I will have to separate these jewels. I dropped the jewel into the base plate, but there's the jewel in the little housing. I need to separate the cap jewel from the rest of the housing, and I think I'm going to have to do that using a piece of Rodico stuck to the cap jewel to kind of peel it off there. All right, there's the cap jewel separated from the jewel housing. The housing contains the lower part of the jewel. These are two-part jewels, so the spindle goes through the lower part of the jewel, and then the end of the spindle rests on the cap jewel. And the one that's used, this is the one from the top of the balance cock, but the one that's on the bottom, for the bottom spindle of the balance wheel, is identical. So I use this piece of Rodico. I kind of wrapped it around the housing and then peeled it apart, and it popped the cap jewel right off then. I'll do the same thing with the other jewel. The entire movement is now disassembled and ready for cleaning. I've got everything arranged in this parts bin according to what part of the movement that they came from. And this is really to help me remember where all the screws go, because there's so many screws in these movements that it's almost impossible to remember which one goes where. And they're not, each part has different size screws. There's some of them where the same screw size is used for several different things, but there's a lot of others that aren't. And sometimes they're very similar in size, so you need to make sure you remember where they go. So I have all the screws for example, the train bridge are in this compartment with the train bridge and the train wheels. The screws that hold on the balance cock and the escape wheel bridge are in here in this compartment. So everything is arranged according to what part of the movement they came from, with the screws and the parts all together. I'll take all the parts out for cleaning, but I'll leave the screws in these compartments so I know where they go when I put the movement back together again. The next thing I'm going to do is clean the movement. And I'm not going to show the cleaning process here because the cleaning process is very similar for pretty much every watch. And I've got a video that shows the entire cleaning process from start to finish. The cleaning the parts in the cleaning machine, pegging the jewel holes, pithing the pivots, cleaning by hand the balance using the 1-dip solution. All that's shown in the cleaning video. So if you want to see how the movement's cleaned, check that out. I've got a link to it in the description. So the next video in this series is going to be when we start reassembling it then.